Today is March 12th, 2011. And we're going to talk about Eileen Ellington's childhood. Can you tell me about when you were a little girl?
Okay. Well, I was named Mary Eileen Morgan, and I was born March 11th, 1922. And one of my earliest memories is going for a sleigh ride in the wintertime. We had a one-horse open sleigh, and I remember Mother holding a baby on her lap, keeping him warm. And I thought it was my brother Dean, and she said, no, it was your brother Eugene. He's just 2 years younger than I am. So I was about 2 years old, and we were going down through the country, and all at once the runner broke on our sled. And we were so upset because we were trying to stay warm in the sleigh. We had quilts and stuff wrapped around us. And the daddy said, well, I think I'm get some wire off this fence. So he climbed a bank and took some wire off of a wire fence, brought down and wired that runner back on the sleigh, and we went home. But I remember that so plain. And Mother said, oh, you just heard us talking about it. But when I was telling her what Daddy did, she said, no, then you've had to remember that. Then of course I grew up, and they wanted, our neighbors wanted me to start the school earlier. She said, she's a smart little girl. She didn't know me very well. But anyway, she said, I'd like for her to start. She was trying to get the teaching job at the school where I would go. But they didn't, I don't think they hired her, and I didn't go to school that year.
Was that in Marshall?
That was out in the country. It's a country school called Brosman School. And we'd have, anywhere from 12 to 20 students going in all 8 grades. For all first 8 grades. It was, elementary was 1st through 8th at that time. So we went to school. We started in the fall. We started in September usually, and we was out in April. And we never missed school. The weather didn't really stop us. You know, the teacher sometimes had to come to school on a horse to get there. But we'd have snow that was deep enough that I just couldn't walk. So my dad would walk in front of me, and I'd walk in his steps. He'd take me all the way up to school, which was about, close to a half a mile out in the country. And it was cold, I remember. We'd be so cold, and our clothes would be wet from the snow, and we'd have to hang them by the big little stove in the corner. It was heated with coal, and we'd just hang. Us kids would all hang our clothes out around the stove there so they'd dry while we were at school. And we'd play games to have a recess. Excuse me. I'm kind of hoarse this morning. But in the summertime, when it was warmer, we would play outside. We'd play games that you're not allowed to play anymore, like Black Man and things like that. You're not supposed to play those games. But we had a lot of fun anyway. And but it was one of the things that I think about school, and it embarrasses me yet today. I was sitting at my desk. We had a desk that 2 people could sit in, and it was called a double desk. And I was sitting there, and school was in session, but it was warm enough we had the door open, and somebody came by on a horse, and I turned around, and it was our neighbor, and I just waved, and I said, hi, Chris. And my teacher said, Mary Eileen, turn around. And he said, you have some work to do. Well, I was in 1st grade. I was just right when school first started in the fall. And so I was embarrassed, and I don't think I said very much. That's hard to believe, but I didn't say too much except when I was asked, then I would answer. But it just embarrassed me. I didn't turn around and look out the door anymore. I paid attention to what was going on at school. And I loved school. I really did. I would listen to my class. We would always go to the front of the classroom to recite when it was time, when it was the first grade or the second grade. That we'd all go to the front of the classroom and we would recite our oral lessons. And we had tablets that we would write down a lot of things too, but the teacher would ask us questions and then we would answer them at the front of the class. Well, all the other grades are still in the same room and they're listening to all these, and I still think that's why we were able to learn more, because if we didn't get it one year, we got it the next, and by listening to the other classes. But it was a lot of fun, and we'd have spelling bees. We learned to spell our words, and we always started the morning with saying the pledge to the flag. And it was, I went 9 years to school because I couldn't go to high school, so I could go back and take what they called a review year. And I got to help the teacher that year, help with the classes. So I really enjoyed that. And I was the only one that was in that review class, so I was able to help some of the little kids with their work. And I would even listen to some of the classes do the reciting while the teacher would be busy with something else. So it was all really fun. I cried when I couldn't go to high school. But I was born so that at the time I was at school age. It was during the Depression. And we didn't have, had very, very little money. I don't know, some of the kids were able to go to high school when there was someone that could drive and take them. But I didn't have anyone going the year that I went, so I would have started.
Where was the high school? Was it further away then?
What?
The high school was further away?
Yes. Yeah, we had, let's see, it was, I expect almost 10 miles into school. Martinsville would have been my closest school. And it might not have been that far, because it seemed like it was 8 miles to Marshall. But anyway, there was no way I could walk, and the folks didn't have the money to pay for me to stay in town, and I was not physically able to work and for my room and board. So I just didn't go to school. But that's why I took the review class, so I would be able to do, get a little more education, and I did. I learned to work with kids. And let's see.
So how old were you?
I started when I was 6. And then when I was not quite, you were supposed to go to school until you were 16. And I graduated, I think I was just 14 when I graduated from the 8th grade. And I went back and reviewed, and I wasn't quite 16 when I quit school then and started working. But it seemed like there was something else that had happened at school. Did I tell about the snow?
Walking behind your dad? Yeah. What about the pencil? Wasn't there a pencil story?
We had twins that lived in our school district, and they were older than me. And but Martha, now Mary was always as sweet as she could be, but Martha, she was always looking after Martha. And I had a pencil that I thought an awful lot of, and she won that pencil. So she gave me some kind of a little old maybe a pencil holder or something. And I took it home one night, and my mother said, "Where'd you get that?" And I told her. And she said, "You mean you let her have your pencil?" And I said, "Yes, we traded." She said, "You get that back." So I did. And that girl had taken a knife and had carved out something on that pencil. Just aggravated me, but it was just a special pencil to me, and she knew it, and so she wanted it. But I did get it back, but it wasn't in the condition it was when she got it. But that was, it was just, I was kind of gullible, I guess. But we became good friends after that, after we all got out of school. And her sister, Mary, was just sweet as she could be. And she had curly hair. And I said, "Oh, your hair is so pretty." And she said, "You know, I had fever." She was sick and had a pretty high fever, and all of her hair came out. And when it came back in, it was curly. So what did I do? I kept wishing I'd had fever so my hair would come out. And you know, that's exactly what happened. When I had fever, when I was in second grade, I had pneumonia, really bad. And I lost quite a bit of my hair, and when it came back in, it was not curly, but it was wavy. And every time when I have lost my hair since then, it has come back in curlier.
Huh.
And I thought it was funny that, so I don't know what the fever evidently had something to do with the roots of your hair. But I would always have to go home from school, and the first thing I did was go out and pick up cobs. The mother and daddy would always feed the chickens corn, and so I'd have to pick the cobs up that's in the chicken lot and bring those in so Mother could have those to start the fire and to cook breakfast the next morning. And then I'd gather the eggs, and then when it was time we'd get the cows in, and I always had a cow that I had to milk. So that was morning and evening. I had to milk before I went to school, and then I milked that evening. And I didn't think anything about it. I had my own personal cow I was supposed to milk, and my brother had one that he was supposed to milk. But we would get the bucket. We had to go out and pump the water into what we called a water bucket. It was usually a granite bucket that we'd carry in water, and we would drink our water from that bucket. And we always had a dipper, and everybody used the same dipper. And that's the thing we did at school. We had a tin cup that hung on the pump outside, and everybody used the same tin cup to get a drink of water. We'd just stand in line, and I think about how we were so careful about that now, not letting anyone drink after us and everything. But of course, when any of us got sick, we all got sick.
Yeah.
But it was during the school that I went the 9 years, and I only had 4 teachers in that 9 years. And they were all very close to me. The one lady teacher I had, I didn't care for her. She was very strict. And but she just was, when my brother, Eugene, started school, she was so tough on him. She just was always criticizing him for something. And it just got me so upset, I just didn't like her. She only taught the 1 year, so I was glad. But I had, her husband was one of the best teachers I ever had, Ivan Beach. And he was still interested after I got out of school. He'd come over to the folks and talk to me and to the folks. And he wanted to know, he wanted me to go on to school so badly. Well, there were just lots of things that has happened. I remember on the Halloween time, my dad always liked to dress up and go someplace. And I'd watch him get dressed up. He used to dress up in some of my mother's clothes. And he could always fool people. They didn't know who he was. They'd go to, they'd have Halloween parties in the neighborhood. And so he would dress up, and I'd watch him getting all dressed up. What tickled me was to see him put on the mother's stockings. They weren't silk stockings then, they were cotton. And then she did, she got so she would buy rayon stockings in to wear for Sunday. But he would put those stockings in her shoes on. That was so funny. And there are just so many things it's hard to remember.
So these Halloween parties, did you do, were there, like today they do the candy, they give away candy now. Did they do that then? Did they like make candy to give to kids at Halloween, or
No.
were you allowed to go to the parties?
I don't remember. I think they just furnished candy. I think they just had candy in a dish, and everybody helped themselves.
Yeah.
But I don't remember that we didn't go around trick or treating.
You just had parties.
They just tricked anyway. My dad has helped turn over outdoor toilets.
Oh.
And always done, just not things that would damage anything, but they had a lot of fun. And of course, us kids always just watched. Then as we got older, then we would join in. But it was just a family fun. That is one thing. We didn't have any money for entertainment, so we'd go to different people's houses, we just all get together. And that's another thing that I still miss that. On Sunday, we all went to church, and most of the time we'd take a dish of some kind of food, because we usually meet at somebody's house and eat Sunday dinner. And everybody took a dish. Well, when you went, you almost had your lunch ready. And the host would usually have to get some kind of meat or something ready. But I remember Mother having to go out and having to kill a chicken so she could get it dressed real quick and fry it. And but it was the kids just had such a good time. All of us cousins, and usually we were relation. And if they weren't cousins, we adopted them as cousins. But we would all have a good time, and the women would be in cooking them, getting all the meals ready. And the men in the summertime, when it was warm enough, they was usually sitting outside. And they usually discussed the sermon that was preached on Sunday, or questions that they had. They had Bible, they just discussed the Bible. And that's where I love to spend my time listening to them, because I learned an awful lot from them when I was young. And it was, I remember one time the Wilhoit family, they weren't relation to us, but Dale Wilhoit was going with my aunt, and Glenn Wilhoit, his brother, was going with my Aunt Lily. So Aunt Marie and Aunt Lily were sisters, and the boys were sisters. Well, when Dale grew up and he decided he wanted to go to Bible college and become a preacher, then he and Aunt Marie split up. And it just broke his heart. He just thought so much of her. And he wrote me when I was in second grade and had pneumonia. He wrote me a letter from Bible college, and I still have that letter. And it has meant a lot to me. He was encouraging me to get better, because I had pneumonia pretty bad. I just was a very sick little girl. And that is what has started a lot of my breathing problems today, is because we had no medication for it, and you just had to get better on your own. The only thing we had was cod liver oil. castor oil. And Dr. Mitchell said that didn't help anything, and I said, well, it did help one thing. And he laughed. But that was the only medication. And I remember they gave it to me in grape juice and coffee. And there was
Gave you
4 years
coffee.
I could not drink coffee or grape juice anymore because I could taste that castor oil.
Ugh.
But and they didn't have orange juice because grape juice we made our own. And during the Depression, that is one thing I told my son the other day that, in fact, I told Carol that during the Depression we got along better than most people, especially the people that lived in the city, because we could raise what food we needed to eat and enough to get us through the winter. It wasn't always what we wanted. And there was always a time that the cows would go dry, and so we didn't have any milk. And until they would have their calf, and then we could start using milk again. But I know that one of our main staples for food when I was small was gravy. And we always made it with milk. And Mother would always make such good gravy. Well, when we didn't have milk, she would put usually it was bacon grease, some kind of meat frying that she had. And she put flour in it, and she would cook it until the flour would brown. And then she would pour water in it. And we laughed, and we called that our steak gravy. And it tasted good, it really did. But of course, when you're hungry, anything tastes good, I guess. But we always had potatoes. Potatoes and gravy was our, you cooked your meal around that. I fixed whatever you did, your meal would just went around the potatoes and gravy. And of course we always had green beans, and so we had plenty of food. We had a variety of food. We never had fruit because we had to buy that. Well, we had canned peaches and pears and plums. We did have those 3 that we canned, but as far as fresh fruit, we didn't, like oranges and bananas. Usually when we go to town, we usually went to just a little grocery store just by the railroad, because it was too far to go into town with the horse and buggy or the wagon. And Mother would take her eggs that she had left over that we hadn't used, and Daddy would take the cream. They would separate the cream from the milk, and they would take it in and trade that at this little store. They'd count out how much they were going to pay us for the cream and the eggs, and then Mother had a grocery list, and so they'd count out how much her groceries cost. And sometimes we had to put some of the stuff back on the shelf because we didn't have enough cream and eggs to buy all the things that we thought we needed. And crackers you always bought in a cracker barrel. There was just a big barrel that you just buy a bunch of crackers. I don't know whether they weighed them. Anyway, that's the way you'd buy, and pickles was the same way. I can remember that.
Wow.
Getting the pickle out of the pickle barrel.
Wow.
And but that's what sometimes Mother really needed something, and so she would go ahead and get it, and they'd write out what they called a due bill. It was just it was a sales slip, and they told how much Mother owed on that. Then the next time she came in with cream and eggs, then they would take it off of that. But very little money.
All trade and little money. Yeah. Wow.
And we went to this little country store there by the railroad, and Ari and Addie Murphy ran that store, and we just thought so much of them. And they were so good to us, and they'd always slip us a little piece of candy once in a while. And I know Mother one thing that she would buy would be 5 cents worth of chocolate creams. We always called them haystacks. They were a cream center covered with chocolate. and she'd buy 5 cents worth of those. And then she would take those home, and when we'd come home from school of an evening, she would cut one of those pieces, and however many kids there were, if there was 2 or 3 kids, or 4, whatever, she would cut that in those, so that we each got a piece of that. And that has always been my favorite. I just couldn't get enough of those. I wanted those so bad. They just, that was our only candy, so it was good. But I got a piece, one part of, I think we started out, it was just Eugene and I, and then when Dean came along, we had to cut that piece in 3 pieces. So each of us had a third. Well, then when Lila June came along, we had to divide it in 4ths. So we kept getting a smaller piece each time. But we always got that as soon as we got home from school. That gave us that little extra energy we needed, I guess. But,
And yet Jeannie still buys those for long.
Does she? That's awesome.
yeah, and she looks till she finds some. They're hard to find anymore. But, let's see.
Did your mom used to make like butter or anything? I mean, of the stuff that you like, the cream and the milk and the eggs and everything that did she used to make like her own butter or?
Oh, yes. Oh, I used to help. She would put the cream in a jar. She had a gallon, one of those daisy churns. She had one of those.
With the glass jar
Yes.
and the little whip in it?
With the
Okay.
handle, and you just kept turning. It had a paddle in the bottom of it.
My mom has.
That's
That's the one that your mom,
That's,
yeah.
Yes, because,
Darrell Lee.
well, yeah, Darrell, but before that, Jeff Knoll's wife,
Oh, Linda Knoll?
Linda Knowles, bought that. And I think she bought that at a yard sale, and I don't know who it was bought that. Whose yard sale it was
I don't remember either.
that had that in the first place. And I just, I wanted that. I wanted to get that so bad, and I didn't have room for it or anything. Well, then Linda was getting ready to sell it, and Darrell came along, and she found out that it was Mother's, and so she got it. And then when she was going to get rid of it, then she got hold of Carol, because she knew Carol wanted to get it for your mom. And now it isn't a daisy churn. I can't. It was that style, but it wasn't that brand. But I've helped churn butter with that too.
How long would that take to churn it into butter? How long?
Oh, it depended a lot on the weather. If it was cooler weather, you could churn it faster. But if it was too warm, it took longer for it to separate the fat from the whey, which is what's left of the milk. And because you get, well, it was just liquid off of the cream. But that's what you were doing. You were separating the cream from that liquid that was there, and the fat all held together. But I would shake it in just a quart jar. Just shake it back and forth until and sometimes I don't know, I think about 15 minutes sometime I got better.
Really?
And, but you had to keep shaking it until that buttermilk come out of the fat.
Hmm.
And then you rinse it off usually and put a little salt in it and put it in your dish and put a little pretty marks on the top of it, spread it all out nice, and then make nice little marks. It's a pretty thing to set when you had company, you could set that fresh thing of butter. Of course, we had no refrigeration.
Yeah, so what did you do, like, I mean, things that we typically, I mean, you just drank your milk as you got it, right?
Oh, yes, I used to. I used to drink milk before it ever hit the bucket. I just squirt it in my mouth and drink it. That's the way I liked it. And Len, I can't stand that now. But I did then, that was good.
So what did you do with like meat and I mean, were there ways of keeping meat for any period of time or did you just
Well, I'll tell you, we never butchered anything but hogs, pigs, and we never butchered the calves because we sold those. And so I didn't hardly know what beef was. I just, until I guess almost when I got married, we would buy a little bit of meat at the store, but hardly ever, because we didn't have any way to keep it.
yeah.
But when you butcher a hog, that was another thing I was thinking about. And I used to like to do all the neighbors would get together and come, and you always butchered an extra hog so you'd have food to give to each one that was helping. And you butchered one for yourself and then one for all your neighbors. And they'd divide that. They'd just all get together and make a whole day of it. And they'd make their own sausage. We had a grinder that to grind up the little rough kinds of pieces of meat that they would cut off of the tenderloins, and then they would fry down. They'd make sausage, and then they'd fry this sausage down, and put it in a jar and pour the grease over it, and set it in a dark place, and that's how you kept the sausage.
Oh.
You just dig it out of that grease. And
So that preserved it. The grease.
Yeah,
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. And we did the link sausage. We'd take the entrails, the guts out of the pigs and scrape them clean, turn them wrong side out and scrape them clean. And then you would take, you put this on a machine that it had a pipe. And you just thread those entrails right on there, those little casings. And then they'd put the ground meat in there and they'd turn the crank and this meat would come out and fill this. And you'd have great big long strings of sausage and then you could turn them and cut them. We'd turn them so they would kind of close the ends.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd cut them so you'd have link sausages then. And they'd fry down tenderloin, and we canned a lot of the meat. Now what we'd usually use for beef or for stew, if you want to make a vegetable stew and use the meat, they'd cut it in pieces, and that's what they would do. And then they'd put it in jars and cold pack it because we didn't have any pressure canners or anything. But they'd can that meat, and then that's what we would open up. You'd open up a can of meat that's already cooked, and it wouldn't take long to get a meal then. And and liver, we fried liver down and put it like we did the sausage. We'd pour the grease over it to preserve it. And boy, that was good to get that. And they'd take the hams, the bigger part of the legs, and they would rub a sugar curing salt on it. It was smoke flavored, and they'd rub that all in, all that the big hams, stick them in a cloth bag, and then hang them up someplace where they would drain, and part of that the water that's in your body or in the body of the pig would drain out, so it would drain. Now we had a smokehouse out on the farm that my dad always would hang this meat up there, and they'd put papers down to catch, the drippings. But they would cure. You'd leave them there for a while, and you'd have some of the best ham you ever had. And so we had meat, but like I said, hogs was the only thing that we butchered. And then after, I don't know, I guess Daddy maybe did butcher a calf. I don't know. Later on when they moved to town. But usually they just bought, they would go and buy a half of a cow or a young calf or something. but it tasted really good, but then it still seemed like that I just liked that home canned ham, or that home fixed ham, and the sausage and the liver, and they would come like to our house and butcher, and then, maybe a week or two, they'd go to somebody else's. Everybody go there, women would all go and help cook the food and that's another thing. You never had room for everybody to sit down at the table. You always sat at the table to eat. And so the men would serve first, and the children if there was room. If not, well, they'd eat just right after the men. And then if there was anything left, the women would all sit down and eat. That was just the way,
Just how it was.
Yeah, that's just how it was.
Wow.
But the women would have a good time visiting, and cooking a meal, and men was having a good time butchering and everything. And then I helped. In the summertime, I'd help when they put up hay. I'd ride the horse, and I'd take pull on a big long pole with a rope and a ring that would go over the stalk of hay, or the stack of hay, and that rope would hold it on, and you put that ring on the end of that pole, and you could drag that whole stack of hay into the barn, and that was my job, to get down off the horse and get that hay shock put together and on that pole and drive it in up to the barn, and then they'd put it there, and they'd have a big hook that come down and fasten onto the hay, and then bring it back up in a pulley. They'd pull the rope up, and it'd bring the hay up into the hay mow.
Huh.
And I always got to do that, and I'd ride on the hay rack a lot of times. I'd be helping to shock the thing, where they'd have all the wheat. They'd put it in shocks, and I'd have to build you'd stack them up together, just kind of around this way, and you get them all stacked so that they wouldn't fall over, and then you'd take another one of those bale. Well, it was wheat. A combine, I guess is what you'd call it, or binder, and they would bind a rope, binder twine around this shock of wheat. It'd be about this big around. It'd be around that and tie it so it would stick together. And then you take those and stack them and make a big shock out of it. And but you take then one of those, and you kind of open the bottom and the top on each end, on each side of the string that was around it, and put that across the top so that the water wouldn't run down into the shock. There was kind of a roof over it. And I would even help do that. And I'd ride out to the hayfield on the hay rack. There was just a special built rack that you put on the wagon chassis to put hay in, and you could just make a great big mound of hay on that. And it was... Okay, you want to know about the first chicken I ever killed to get it ready to cook, to eat. I was working for a little lady that she was staying with her because her daughter had to be gone, and I stayed with her, and that's another story. I'll tell you later. But anyway, they wanted me to kill this old red rooster, and he was an old one. And so Mother always just took the axe, and she'd put their head down on a stick of wood, and she'd chop the head off, and then let them hold them up, or they'd flop around and get most of the blood out of them. Well, I tried that, and I couldn't get the head all the way off. I got it part way off. So that rooster was running around all over the lot there with his head hanging over. I had to go to the neighbors, and they had a young man that was working for him. He had horses. This fellow had horses, and so this young man was working for him. And I said, could you come down and help me? I tried to kill this rooster, and he's running around with his head hanging off. And so he just laughed to come down there, and he just teased me for a long time about how I couldn't kill it. He said, that was a tough old rooster, he said. But I did, and I like to never got all the feathers picked off of that old thing. You had to dip them down in a bucket of water, and not quite boiling. You don't want it boiling because that would take the skin off. So you got it real hot, and you'd soak all those feathers, and then you'd start pulling them out. And then you'd have to pick all the little pin feathers. There was little black feather things, so you had to pick those all out. And then you had to cut them and get all the insides out of them, clean them, and then cut them up. But we cooked that old red rooster. But I never killed another one since. I said, oh, that did me in.
I can imagine.
Did Grandma kill all of the chickens when you were little, or?
Well, if Daddy wasn't around, she'd have him do it because she was busy trying to get other foods ready, and he would do that. But if he didn't, well, she would go out. But Grandma Ellington just grabbed a hold of their head and just swung them around like this.
Oh!
And I couldn't do that either.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
But that was awful good eating, though. Well, you talk about fresh meat.
Well,
You really
yeah.
have fresh meat.
Not pumped full of
And
junk.
you get it, you get them all cut up, and then you cook. The meat wasn't hardly cool. I mean, the body heat was still there some, and we'd let it soak in just cold water, too. That way it would soak out all the blood that might be left in the chicken, and but then you could just roll it in flour with salt and pepper and stick it in this skillet with a lot of grease on it, so that it'd fry up around it. You talk about something being good, that was, and the fried chicken today doesn't taste like that. Well, I think for one thing, the chickens they're raised different, and you don't have the same flavor. But that was one of the best meats we had. But I tell you, I just never will forget trying to kill that old red rooster. And they said if I'd have started on a younger one, so I'd have got the head off the first chop. But I just kept trying. Well, he'd flip away from me. I was trying to chase him
old
all
rooster.
And the expression, you run around like a chicken with its head off. And they will, even after their head's completely off, they will still walk around.
Oh, that's creepy.
And I always was afraid they was going to run into me. Couldn't see where they were going.
Did you have chicken very often, or did you have to kind of space it out so that you?
Oh, we had chicken because we raised chickens every year. We'd buy little, the folks would, there was a hatchery that they would buy just newborn chicks, and just little fluffy things. You'd bring them in, buy them 100 at a time, and then you'd feed them a little chick feed, and raise them, and then they get to be about, a pound and a half chicken. Boy, you talk about tender. It was tender meat. I love fried chicken. I still do.
Even after that rooster. Even after that rooster, you still love fried chicken.
We had to stew him.
Oh.
He was too tough. That's what she wanted, was so she'd stew him and make noodles and have chicken
Making noodles.
He did make some good noodles. But Mrs. Clausen she got so tickled at me too, and then she taught me how to do stitching to hem a dress so that your stitches didn't show. And she taught me a lot of little things like that while I was staying with her. And while I was staying with her, I'll just go ahead and tell this story. While I was there, it was about, I think, 4 or 5 miles out of town. Well, my boyfriend worked at a grocery store in Martinsville called Miller's. It was a general store. I mean, it sold They sold clothes and yard goods and groceries and everything. And he worked there. And his boss was very strict. You didn't talk to anybody unless they were your customers. You talked to them about what they wanted to buy. And so I would walk into town when Mrs. Clausen would lay down and take her nap. I'd go walk into town and buy 5 cents worth of cinnamon balls. And then, so I could talk to him, because he could talk to me as long as I was buying something. So I bought that, and I'd stay a little while and visit with him, and then I'd walk back down to the farm to see him.
4 and 5 miles. Wow.
Yeah, I was used to walk. I walked every place. If it was bad weather, my brother and I would put our boots on and we'd walk down through the hills and hollers and cross over to go to church. Because it was just bad weather, and so we just go that way. And it protected. It was woods and stuff, you know. A lot of the wind didn't hit us too much. It was the longest place was when we got down by where Carney's used to live, down the lane from the church, and we had that lane to walk up to the church house. But we'd go. That's what we would walk over there. And so I've walked a lot, and I think about that now. I sure don't walk that much, but I sure had to then. But we walked to church, and we were going to, it was called a Christian Endeavor Party. That was a church, young people of a church, and we had it in the evening. And we were to go to Gordon Irwin's house. His mother was our leader, and she was going to have a party at her house, so I wanted to go, and I don't think Eugene went. I think I went by myself. But anyway, I walked over down through the woods and stuff to where Rudolph and Pauline Bell lived, and I went with them in the car. I walked over to their house, and I left the boots. I'd borrowed a pair of boots. I was working for my cousin Harley Brossman,